So I just want to jump right in because we don't have a ton of time.
Sure.
There were only a few scenes with the Maggie character in season three, and a lot of
Yeah.
fans are interested in wanting more and wanting to see more of that character. And from what we're aware of season four, we'll have more. And we wanted to kind of get a sense of how, if you could talk about it, how her role expands a little bit and what other characters may be prominent or we may see more of.
That's tough for me because it's a huge spoiler if I tell you what happens in season four. I'll tell you the reason she's not big in season three is because she's not big in the book. So
Right.
there was not too much for us to be able to play with her in season three. But if anyone's familiar with the Law of Innocence, which is what the fourth season would be based on, she's a much bigger character in the
So,
Law of Innocence.
well, that's a helpful answer in a way.
Yeah.
For those who are interested in wanting to know more, exactly. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so similar about a character kind of Bosch is a big part of the story and that book and that universe. And as many people know, Bosch is a character on his own show on the platform. So curious to know if you can talk a little bit about or answer anything for fans about like how you guys are handling him, if there's a possibility of a crossover, if there's ways to work around it, or if you can speak
Yeah,
on that.
I mean, as of right now, we don't see any way that we can have a crossover. It's just two platforms owning two different properties, and it sucks. That being said, I mean, our version of Mickey Holler is maybe slightly lighter than the books, and I think we would figure out a way to bring Bosch, the Bosch that exists in Amazon in our world, but they are tonally very different shows. Do you know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the best way we've been able to do it is sort of by expanding the characters that we have created,
Tell
by
some of
expanding
them.
Cisco and Izzy. We sort of like play off some of that stuff. And then as we move on, if we were to do season five, or season six, like other books like Resurrection Walk or The Reversal, where Bosch is very big in, we'd figure out a way to maybe create a character that would fill in that character, what happens in those books in a way that would be satisfying, I think, to the
Sure.
audience.
No, that
Yeah.
makes sense. That makes sense. As you know,
Yeah.
there's been times where platforms or studios loaned characters and things, but yeah, that makes
It's
sense.
tough.
Not in the cards, probably. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the relationship to the McConaughey Lincoln Lawyer movie. Is a TV show sort of different? Have they talked about a sequel? Are there ways you see that the series works better, opens things up for you? Like, how have you guys approached it? Kind of like, and is there any connection? I mean, beyond the obvious?
Well, I mean, the obvious is that we weren't able to redo the movie. So the movie is the first book, The Lincoln Lawyer. And so we have to pick up with the brass verdict. And that's why we sort of touch a little bit on the Jesus Menendez and all that stuff that actually happens in the movie, and sort of try and pick up from that. But we really can't use that first book, so we can't do anything from that. I think the thing that makes us a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for, not honest, but more closer to the book, is
Faithful.
in the book. Yeah, thank you, faithful. I'm a writer, should know that word. um he's Mickey is Mexican in the books,
Yeah,
so
and Matthew McConaughey
that's
is not.
Matthew McConaughey's not. And no offense to Matthew McConaughey, he also has a very thick Texas accent in
Yeah,
that
totally different.
movie,
Yeah, yeah,
which he's
totally
also
different.
not in the books. He's an
Yeah,
Angelino, and in the books he's half Mexican, half American, white guy. His mom's Mexican, his dad's uh Irish American, from LA. And we because we cast Miguel, who is actually native of Mexico, we had to make some adjustments in the backstory, to have him being raised in Mexico, et cetera, to make sense of the accent and so on and so forth. But I think what we're able to do that movie couldn't is that I think we can get into more like the character development and the nitty gritty of the character. And I think some of the nuances of the book that you can't really do in a films. Like, for example, in the book, Mickey's always eating at restaurants. He's a foodie. So we're able to like play into that, expand that, you know what I mean? And I think
yeah,
we're able to really explore LA much more than a movie can.
Which,
Yeah,
you touched on a few really cool things I think about what you can do, especially his identity. His identity, ethnically, his background is a big part of what you
yeah.
explore and do, and you have room to play with that. And of course, like LA is such a great landscape for that identity cross. But can you talk more about the opportunities you've had to do that, the ways you want to go further into that, and like what it as like a creative, just as an expression, like what it allows?
Yeah, I mean, in the books, he talks about being Mexican in the books. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because he talks about like not really speaking Spanish, but he understands it a lot. So of course we had to make that change. But that's a very common Chicano experience in LA. There are a lot of Chicanos that don't speak Spanish. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
I'm
live in
from
Los
LA. I
Angeles.
know them. Yes.
Yeah, but they understand a lot of it. But
Yeah.
so we're able to sort of explore a little bit of all of that. I think in second season when we cast Lana Parrilla, who's Puerto Rican and Italian, we cast her as a character that like didn't learn how to speak Spanish because her parents wanted to assimilate. Do you know what I mean? So we have that kind of character, but then we can explore like a gardener with an accent, a tailor that speaks Spanish only to Mickey, an FBI agent who's Dominican and is stationed in LA and is bilingual. Do you know what I mean? We're able
Yeah.
to sort of, my favorite thing about it is the ability to explore all facets of what it's like to be Latina or Latinx or whatever term you'd like to use in Los Angeles and in America. LA is really unique because it's almost 50% Latin. And I think that we really embrace that. When I came onto the show second season to work with Ted, I was very clear about it. I said, one of my favorite things about this is that Mickey is really a modern Latin man in LA. And I really was like, it's important for us to really show what LA looks like. And I think they did a good job in season one, but I think we branched it out even more. And when you look at the show, it feels so diverse and not just Latin. It feels like of a piece. It feels like real LA when you're watching it.
Yeah.
And it was super important for us. Our background actors are very diverse. We even cast. We're very realistic. We cast 60 plus for the judges, which makes a lot of sense. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So we have sort of an LGBTQ and all that kind of diversity that I think is really important to Los Angeles. So to me, I think we're able to do a show that feels very authentic without like an agenda.
I hear you. I mean, it's
Do you
tricky
know what I mean?
because oftentimes people want to put that in there, but it's hard to do it, weave it into the tapestry in a natural way. But when you're
Right.
working in Los Angeles and law enforcement and just the world of Los Angeles, it's there already. It's like a potpourri
Yeah.
buffet. Tell me a little bit about Los Angeles as a character, because it's interesting how it's been in cinema. It's like I think of Michael Mann, I think of all
Yeah.
these ways. Like, is that like how have you handled that, and how do you approach it?
Yeah, Ted always talks about a movie that he thinks is a little bit of an inspiration for this, which is The Long Good Night with Elliot Gould. It was
Oh,
like a film noir movie. Yeah, and Elliot's in our
Robert
show.
Altman. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very much like our show is noir, but it's like slightly comedic noir. It lives in like a slightly different place than Bosch does because Bosch is very noir. And it allows us to really make LA a character. And to me, I'm not from LA originally, I'm from New York City. And I really love LA. It's very different from New York. And what I love about LA also is this sort of it's this underpinning. It's one of the things that I like about David Lynch movies that are shot in LA. It's like this like glossy, pretty thing, but underneath there's like something awry,
So yeah,
something's
so bad,
wrong.
so bad at it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
bad.
it's like that's why if in the finale there's that scene where they it was my idea to set that first scene in Bob's Big Boy, but
Sure.
there's this pop song that's playing over it, and it's a really not a good conversation. They're
Yeah, it's
not
not it's terrible. It's
election.
that
Yeah.
it's so poppy versus
It's
something so dark, which is
so
LA.
dark, which is LA and Bob's Big Boy. And so there's this element of it that's like so pretty, yet you turn a corner and you're like, oh, I shouldn't turn the corner down,
Yes.
down the
Some people
street.
never turn the corner, but your show
Don't turn
does
the
a
corner.
yeah,
Yeah,
the show
that's
does a great job showing both. Um, New York is similarly just infested with story and
Hmm.
diversity and character. So that certainly has to inform, I think, some of your approach to just like melting potness of like
Oh yeah.
city crime, the relationship between law enforcement and regular people and all that. So
Yeah, 100%. We just spend more time in our car in Los Angeles, which I think adds like another level of anxiety to, to the show, but also lends another level of beauty to the show because you can be driving in this convertible through Beverly Hills and something really nefarious is about to happen, you know? So I like the juxtaposition of that. And I think we really try hard to express that.
do you guys have things like now kind of taking away a little bit just from what happens in the books and future seasons, you have things that are like on a board in your mind or in an office that are like really want to do that one day, really want to get there, really want to take it in this direction, like kind of wish list items, because like it's a big sandbox that you guys are playing in, really like noir, like procedural, but
Yeah.
with all these other elements, and like you said, there's like humor to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I'm always joking around with Ted about is that I really want to see how Mickey and Lorna met and how they got married. Like, if I could flashback to that, I would love to see that because I think they're such different creatures. Like, how did that happen? That's always something that's like in the back of my mind. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do it, but that's like one example. Um, Other than that, we I think we probably want to, just for our own Easter egg, just
Keep it to
for the
yourself.
LA Easter egg world, we want to like shout out more restaurants and coffee shops and like you know just like celebrate celebrate that part of Los Angeles that I think is so unique and cool and
Yeah,
people love.
shooting there is unique too. It didn't used to be, but it kind of is sometimes now. Can you talk a
Now
little
it is,
about?
yeah. Well, I'm hoping that's going to change with the new tax incentives that Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass are talking about. It's really a shame because I actually think that LA looks so beautiful on camera, and that's what Los Angeles was created to do. It should be a place to shoot cinema, and the weather is much more compliant for shooting in LA.
Yeah. It is
So
singular looking. So if you want it to take place there, just like New York, you can definitely fake it. But like it's nice to have access to the
yeah,
unique.
I mean, I was just watching Nobody Wants This and with my husband last night, and I was like, you could fake this, but it's so much better. Do you know what I mean? Where you can really see that they're shooting on the, and we shoot a lot on the East Side, one, because it's easier because we're near the courts, but also because I think in most movies, you've seen Beverly Hills, you've seen Malibu, and we do it on the show. We did it first season, and we've done Beverly Hills, and we've done the Hill, like Hollywood Hills, and all that stuff. But it's nice to see the bridge in Pasadena. It's nice to see other aspects of LA that don't get as much love, I think, cinematically because
And
it's so
have some like
diverse.
historic, like you mentioned the bridge, like there's some like historic look there. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, so many pockets people don't look at, places people don't go. Question about off topic, total different direction.
Yeah.
Ending of Queen of the South and like fan
Yeah.
response and like how you feel about it, maybe how you felt about it at the time. Like, this is just throwing this in there because it's something that I know people talk about a lot on the internet and think about. So curious if you have thoughts.
Well, that show went through a lot of hands. And I came in on I started working on the show season 2 as a co-executive producer. And then on season 4, I took over as co-showrunner. And we were saddled with the pilot, which is that she dies.
Yeah.
She gets shot. And we really had to figure out a way to make that work. But I felt very strongly, and so did the writers on the show, that Teresa was not Walter White. Teresa was not Michael Corleone. Teresa was not the same kind of gangster. So
Hmm.
Teresa did not deserve to die in
Hmm.
that same way. So when we decided that that was the case, that this is a person that, like, for me, very much Teresa Mendoza was um, a victim that became a survivor. And
Hmm.
once she became a survivor, she became empowered and she became a boss.
Yeah.
And once she sort of took control of her own life, I didn't feel that she deserved to be punished with death for things that she had to do to be able to survive. So once we decided that, that's why we decided the best way to do it was to give her a happy ending and have her faked her death.
I love that you distinguish that there's like a there may not be justice in the world certainly now, but like there is like in fiction, there's a kind of like justice that audiences and creators can agree upon. And I think you're talking about something that a lot of people don't realize, which is like we're kind of like comfortable with Walter White or Michael Corleone dying because we understand like there's this agreement that's like, yeah, they did enough bad things. Maybe it's like, okay. But in her case, you were like, I feel that I can't, that's not appropriate, that's not the appropriate or fair thing to do, you know?
That's how we felt. We also felt like she was always fighting against that instinct. People were constantly saying to her, you think you can do this with morality and you can't. And she keeps trying to do it from a moral place. And then she's challenged deeply in season 4, especially with morality. But she's also challenged in season 4 with the people that are a little bit like what we do in season 3 with Mickey. She realizes that the really bad guys are the ones with the badges, are the ones that have all the power, that are in the system, the judges, the cops, like the people that have done this are what happens when those are really the bad guys. And
Yeah.
I think playing with that, what is moral and what isn't, and who are the bad guys, is something that I really love doing. And I'm glad we were able to do it also with Lincoln Lawyer, to bring it back to that. But I think that for her, she struggles with the morality so much, but then she gets to this place where I think she realizes if she continues, she will completely lose herself. So
Yeah.
she has to get out. Do you know what I mean? She makes the choice that it's done. I won't be that person, you know?
Yeah. I mean that, again, I think it's a really interesting note that like the choices the character makes throughout the point kind of dictate what fate they've earned in the creators,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Very
and,
much.
and audiences don't always consider, there's a certain amount of shock sometimes, or like people get upset or they get attached. But I think that in the back of your mind thinking, I want to be fair with what I've put this character through.
I do feel like maybe you would know better than I do. I really do feel like the audience was pretty much on board with her having a happy ending. I felt at the end, I think people were happy. I felt a lot of people were trepidatious because of how the series started, that she was going to die. And it was extremely hard to figure out a way to fake her death that felt realistic,
Yeah,
because
that's
people do that sometimes. Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Like because you have you know, the worst thing, right, is giving someone an inauthentic, right,
Yeah.
ending, like you, because you don't feel comfortable with what you feel like it should be, that sort of thing. I mean, people,
Yeah.
right? Don't people still theorize that like Walter White faked it and they're gonna have him come back or something like that? Like,
Well, and people are not sure. Did Tony Soprano die in
right,
that
right,
moment in
right.
the diner? Or did he not? Like, nobody really knows. You know, I mean, the theory is that guy came in and killed him, but do we know that? We don't know, you know, sort of
You
leaves it up in the air.
ending a show so hard. Like, do you like? It seems like so many, even the great. You just brought it up. It's like even the most beloved shows struggle with
Yeah.
it. Like, don't satisfy. Like, you've been through this. You're probably going to be through it again. like, what are your thoughts about the right and wrong ways to do it? Maybe you've kind of already answered that, but it's a
I mean,
really
my
interesting.
biggest fear is that Netflix tells me tomorrow that the end of the show is a dead body in Mickey's the trunk of Mickey's car. I don't know what I will do. I will just be like, why did this happen to us? It would be the worst.
Right.
So,
I mean,
and I
that's,
was,
you're
I mean,
explaining sometimes it's beyond your control. So
sometimes it's completely out of your control. We have an idea of how we would like to end Lincoln Lawyer, and we're hoping we get to do that. Like, we know what would be a satisfying ending for the series, and we hope we get to do that. I very much get very sad when shows are. I worked on a show once where it's called The Glades, where the character was shot on his way to his wedding, and then they canceled the show, and it was just like so depressing. So
yeah,
depressing.
people get so attached. Like it's more
Yeah,
than it's a lot, and then they don't get a
it's a
chance to.
lot.
you've worked on, like, you worked on Ugly Betty, you've worked on so many different shows. Are there things that like you feel like what are some of the toughest earned like lessons about TV and TV development that you kind of, if you could leave us with something that's like, yeah, that
It's it's
really.
it's hard to develop in the Latin space. Um, it's a bit heartbreaking. I've developed a lot, and it's really hard to get that green light. And it's even harder when you see a lot of our shows getting canceled. Um, that's heartbreaking, you know?
The audience is surely there. That's the thing that's kind of interesting about
Yeah,
it, right? Yeah.
yeah. I think the problem is that I think that we're not a monolith, as the election just showed us.
Mm.
And I think that that's what happens because we're not a monolith. Nobody can quite figure out how to pinpoint that place where we all sort of meet in the middle and everybody shows up. But then I look at the numbers when I look at like studies and stuff, and it's not quite true that Latinos don't show up for other Latino shows.
Mm.
So it's confusing to me. I don't know why they don't do better. I have some theories that I don't know are right about marketing. Because if you take something like Narcos or Queen of the South, which granted, I think we should move past the drug
Sure.
stereotype. But that being said, they were marketed as crime shows. They weren't marketed as Latino shows. Lincoln
Mhm.
Lawyers marketed as a legal show. Will Trent is marketed as a cop show. So there's something about when we slap a certain marketing phrase on our shows that I think turns off other people that otherwise may want to see it that are not Latino. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know that for a fact, but it feels like, do you know what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
don't
I
know why
do.
that happens.
I
It's very strange.
This is we're in a weird time in the industry,
Mhm.
certainly, because its audiences are fragmented and niche, but it still feels like sometimes the angle is to try and go for the biggest possible, like hit the biggest possible target and the most possible people. But there's some very committed niche audiences too, and it's
I
sort
mean,
of.
look at Squid Game. Look at Squid Game. Who would have thought you put that and all of a sudden it's like a gigantic hit? But that's what I mean. It's like I don't feel like anybody knows anything. It just feels like something hits, somebody finds it, it becomes part of the zeitgeist, and next thing you know, everybody's talking about it. It just doesn't feel. I just feel like we're just throwing darts at a board, and nobody quite knows where the bullseye is, and it's.
Well, one of my favorite Hollywood quotes is William Goldman, the screenwriter, says something about like nobody knows anything. It's just like that was like in the 70s or
Yeah,
something. But it's like,
but
so
I
I,
think that that's. I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, look at like we have a Gen Z is sitting around watching Friends on rerun repeat.
yes.
You know what I mean? It's like I just who knows? I think the one thing that always wins out at the end of the day is compelling story, com- talented actors, good performances, things that look pretty, are well shot, and are compelling to look at. And it's all at the end of the day, it's alchemy. It's just magic. And it just happens and it hits. And
And it's so hard because there's so many forces that pull in different directions, right? So
yeah,
know if that alchemy is going to happen until it's all the pieces are in the stew, sort of.
100%. I have to tell you, when I saw the first season, and I know you probably have to go. When I first saw the first season of Lincoln Lawyer, the show hadn't aired yet, and they approached me because Ted was looking for a co-showrunner.
Mhm.
And I watched it, and after like the first or second episode, I turned to my husband. I said, "This is going to be a hit." I just felt it in my bones. It was one of those things where I just watched it,
What was
and
it?
it was Manuel.
Hmm.
It was Manuel and Becky and Angus. There was something about the grouping of these people and how they were interplaying, and I think how LA was being shot, and it felt different enough from Bosch. Didn't quite feel like Bosch, and I just sort of and I said, and it felt a little throwbacky, like to old stuff like Rockford Files, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it felt like throwbacky, and the storytelling was really propulsive and like really interesting. And I said, I think this is going to be a big hit. I just feel it in my bones when I watched it. So that's why I was like, I got to take a meeting with Ted, because at that point, then I was like, I feel like I know what I can bring to the table. It's all really great, but I know what I can sort of,
Did you and
I
you
hope I know what I can bring to the table.
pitched taking the meeting and you went into the room and you were like, here's what I want to do or bring to the
Yeah, we actually had like a meet cute. We had like Ted and I had coffee, and then
bump into each other
and to see if
holding
we
shoulders or
yeah
something?
to see if we got along, and because we're kind of like an arranged marriage. And I told him all the things that I thought really were great about the show, and there were some things that I had the cojones enough to criticize because it's someone's creation, you know.
Yeah.
And then I said, these are some of the things that I think we could do a little bit better or
Can
different
you share
or
what
add
those
to
were? Are
it.
you comfortable sharing
Yeah,
what
I think I came in and I think I said I think the show could look even better. I also thought that
like
the
visually, just like from a
like
visual?
visually, I thought the show could be well served with like a change of DP. And the thing is, in the first season we had 3 different DPs, so I think some of it had to do with that there was not enough continuity the first season. So I think we had much more continuity second season, which helped a lot. So we had a much more clear visual expression of the show. And also I felt like the show could have a little bit more humor and a little bit more soap. And my biggest thing to him was like, Manuel is so charming and attractive. In the first season, he's very dour because he's coming out of addiction and he's trying to rebuild his business and rebuild his reputation. So to me, when I came into season 2, I was like, how do we get Mickey smiling in almost every scene? You know what I mean? And to me, it was because I felt like he was so charismatic when he's like that, and kind of like scruffy. And I think that that's a really attractive kind of male to a lot of women. You know what I'm saying? His kind of character. And I felt like we could glow him up a little. You know what I mean? And
Also very different from Bosch. And like you said
yeah,
earlier, one of the unique traits of the series is more like the long goodbye, less like the big sleeve, kind of like more like the lighter version of noir, more like the you just mentioned Rockford Files, which is like classic
yeah,
stuff, and like he's fun, he's like charming, like there's a little bit more like joke.
yeah. And all of that is in their first season, but it's the classic thing that happens with the first season show. You're building it, you're setting it up, you're trying to find it, and then every season I think we get better and better, and it gets easier, and all the actors sort of start getting comfortable in their clothes, like old worn sweater, you know what I mean?
The
And
thing where people like don't want to have to start a show because they're like, oh, it takes a while or it gets better, it's this, but like it's just true, right? It just takes a little
yeah,
time in the groove. Like, how is it that
it's
like when you come in at the start, do you guys ever have when you start these, or you came in obviously season 2, but you're like, do we have a little anxiety about getting to the best we can be as soon as possible so people can see what we've got to offer, knowing that you
every
like,
100%. It's like
yeah,
you have one shot and you're like, how do we do the best that we can here? And like some of it's completely out of your control. Like it sucks that there were 3 different DPs. What can you do? Do you know what I mean? It's some of it's out of your control. I think the actors, there's something inevitable. The actors are still trying to find it, and the writers are still trying to find it. So you're doing the best you can, and you hope. Like for example, like the first season of Queen of the South was notoriously very chaotic.
mm, yeah,
And that show was like really made in the editing room in post. That show was really made in post, and it was one of those things that it just hit.
mm,
And they just were able to find it, but it was chaos getting there. So sometimes that happens, and then sometimes it just like all clicks. I think the first season of Ugly Betty is an example of everything just clicked.
mm.
Everything was like click, 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 click. Everybody got it. The production designer, everything just sort of clicked into
And the
place for
audience,
that show,
right?
and the audience. Yeah,
And
but I
sometimes you
think
don't
that
find your audience at first, right?
I think Ugly Betty is rare, though. I think
Yeah.
Ugly Betty is like a rare example of something that like hit and and fired on all cylinders really quickly.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's a process, you know. So you do the best you can. But like I said, when I saw it, I knew it was there. I saw it and I was like, "This is a great show. They wrote a great show. It's great. It could just get dialed up a little bit, you know." And I think we've done that, and we're really, especially season 3, we think it's our best season. So
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you guys are kind of like off to the races, so hopefully you can keep taking it in the direction you're going,
I
and
hope so.
people are excited about the future for sure.
Yeah, the business is a little fucking crazy right now.
Sure is. Well,
But we'll
what
see.
isn't today, right?
The world is crazy. Everything is
Yeah.
crazy. So we'll see.
Well,
Thank you so much, George.
thank you, Dailyn. Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. It was nice talking to you. Great questions. Thank you.